I've got an absolute peach in the Martin Pipe. Like, it's like, oh, it's so good. So I'll save that for...
You've got to let us know.
No, you can't. They can't have it now. The people can't have it now because it's so late on in the festival. I feel like I've got to mention it later. But like, honestly, fancy
is it bigger than 10-1?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
It's 50-1, mate, and it wins. It actually wins as well. Anywho, we'll come on to that in a moment. Don't rush me, Josh. Do we want to look at some of the ones that we might want to take on? Considering I've mentioned most of the favourites in my selections, or do we want to start talking about ones at bigger prices you might fancy that might be off the radar?
Easy. I'm easy to do either.
Let's go off the radar then, because anybody that carried on watching for that and stopped and didn't try and skip towards the end of the video, because what I've done now is told them I'm going to put it at the end. All the skippers are going to miss it, and I'll tell them at the end that they should have gone back and watched it. I'll tell you the one I like. I don't want to get too overexcited, but you know when you fancy one that's like a bit of a price, and then obviously you know it's a massive price, so you have to give yourself the reality that it's probably not going to win. And then you look at it a couple more times and you start thinking, like, I actually think this is going to win. And then I think it inflates the excitement because it's such a big price. It shouldn't be that price. The whole value argument in your head, all that sort of stuff. But without further ado, Gordon Elliott or Denise is going to win the Martin Pipe with Fleur, providing Michael Gretsch keeps it within that yard. Wherever it goes, it's going to win. Gordon Elliott owned this horse when he won first. You're having to look him up. That's the best thing about it. Gordon Elliott bought this horse from France, right? And I think he was 9-2 or something for this Irish maiden hurdle or an Irish hurdle anyway. I fancied him then. Admittedly, with the French one, it was a bit punty because there's only so deep you can go into it. But I looked at it and I thought, like, it's Gordon Elliott. He loves throwing these ones up first time. They're going to win. He's going to sell it to somebody. And like they really, really did try that day. Like they were like fairly aggressively riding him, to be fair. He was 9-2 the night before. Backed him. Went down to my local boozer to watch it. None of my mates were about, so I was just sat there like on my own. Told an old man about it. He walked off and he went and played the hitbox. No one would listen to me about it. Anyhow, he drifted out to 14s with the sports book, and I was thinking, oh, Dave, you've got this wrong in you. It's drifting. Went on to the exchanges. It was 20s. Do you know what I thought? I actually do fancy this. I'm in the pub. No one's going to talk to me. I'll have a little bit more on. Then the money started coming, Josh, and they backed it back into about 4-1. I think it might have gone off at, and it was very impressive. And you'll see now you've got the racing post up. There's a couple of horses in behind that aren't half bad, isn't there?
Yeah.
So the plan with him was, Josh, that they over hurdles this season. They'd get his mark down quite a bit, and then they'd win a handicap. And then they sent him over fences, so it ruined me for the season.
That's what I was going to ask. I thought that I didn't actually know that he was entered in the race.
Yeah, well, you know. So they fannied about with fences with him, which I guess, I don't know, maybe when they sold it to him, they were like, oh, this would be a great chaser for the future. But I thought, do another season over hurdles. Let's get his mark down a little bit. And then even if he doesn't do the handicap bit over hurdles, his mark will be so low that they'll stick him in a handicap over fences, and he'll do that the season after. So we get the money back at some point. But they ran him over fences. He didn't run that well. Then they dropped him in a nice little cheeky handicap hurdle last run, and he caught my eye. Like, he was just, considering a horse that hasn't been showing anything for a few runs, he ran nice enough. And he's in the Martin Pipe. Like, the slight worry with him is he'll have to be quite a good horse to defy the mark that he's got. And whether he is quite a good horse or not, I don't know. But I just think he's a stupidly massive price. I think he probably needs to be a couple of pounds or a few pounds lower. But given what happens with the Martin Pipe in previous years, where there's fallers, mistakes that are made, it tends to be a bit of a scrappy race. Like, he could get away with being a couple of pounds too high, I think. I don't know whether he still is. I think he's 50s, isn't he?
He's 32-1 across the board.
33s?
Yeah.
Oh, they've obviously watched the other video where I put it out. But yeah, like, it's still a big price. I genuinely think this horse has got an actual chance in the race. So I don't know if I've sold it to you or not, Josh, but they can't really lose, can you, back him at that price?
Martin Pipe is very good this year. Last year I backed Column of Fire after the Dublin Racing Festival before, and put him up in the Racing Post at 16-1. He went there on the day. If he jumped the last, he would have won. Still a bitter taste in my mouth after that. And at the start of the season, I sort of tried to find the Jigginstown horse, and it was wide receiver. And I backed him at 25-1 for any race. He's now into 8-1. which is a nice price. It is after timing, but if you'd watched our videos before on Let's Talk Racing, you would know. And I think 136. I think the last day, Robbie Power was set out to do a job, and I think he did it very well. A mark of 136 would probably get him in, and if he does get in, he'll be towards the bottom of the weights. And Gordon loves winning this race. Gigginstown have got a great habit of winning the race, and I think that he'd have a great chance up until the weights came out, and then Gentleman Demi came into the picture off 139. Now I thought this horse would be handicapped out of the race. I thought he would have a mark over 145. He's been given 139, and I understand why he's got the market support now. He's into favourite, very impressive in his maiden hurdle, comes with a hefty price tag. So I don't think you can go much wrong backing both wide receiver and Gentleman Demi. If you had a tenner or if you had 20 quid and you put a tenner on each, I think one of them will do the business, hopefully beating your one.
Well, yeah, Fleur can come third, can't it, for the monthly play pundits will back it. I'm just on the nose though, Josh. I just always in on it. So I like him. Gentleman Demi wound me up the mark because I was the same as you. I was debatable whether he was going to get in. I mean, Colin Maffei's been dropped. Colin Maffei's going to run again, or can.
Yeah.
But his run the last day was like genuinely worrying, wasn't it? How bad he was.
I think it was worrying. I heard that he wasn't in great shape at home, and that he may not even run at the festival. I think he was going to go for the attempts, and then he was scratched from a couple of the qualifiers. So I still wouldn't be massively certain he'd definitely run. And if he does, it'd be interesting to see what race. I think he would have won the race last year if he'd stayed up at the last, but he's been disappointing on his only run this year. So interesting. 145 definitely gives him a squeak. I just don't think he is the same horse of last year, but he is only 7 and has plenty of improvement. But wide receiver, I think he's been the one that Gordon Elliott's targeted for the whole season at this. I think he'd have a massive chance, and so would Gentleman Demi. So it's an interesting one. I think it's high class, and like these races are now producing really high class winners, aren't they?
Mm. And it was a nice race last year as well, because Happy Go Lucky was interfered a bit from the faller, and that looks like it's got a proper chance in the Ultima.
Yeah.
Like it looks a pretty nice race. Even Indefatigable, that won it at a big price. We saw Dame de Compagnie beat it before. They argued, didn't they, pre-festival about getting the pounds down. So Indefatigable was a findable winner last year.
Yeah. There was Ascaria 10. There was Front View, Umbrigado, the Boss's Oscar, all in behind.
Proper race, isn't it?
Proper race.
But Fleur wins it anyway. So I've chucked in one at, I can't say 50s because obviously it's not 50s, but 33 is still fair enough. That's the only like slightly annoying thing in it when they're massive prices. The increments they go down at now, it's like they significantly dropped, didn't they? Like you fancy him at 50 to 1 like 3 or 4 days ago, and then before you know, 20 to 1, and then at 20 to 1 you start questioning yourself, should you really be talking about it? But never mind, 33 to 1 winner is better than a 50 to 1 loser. Mm-hmm. Who do you like at reasonable prices or something that's further off the radar? Hopefully one that I can disagree with.
I quite like Monte Cristo in the Coral Cup if he runs there. He's also in the Martin Pipe, both off 145. It's a Simon Manure horse trained by Nicky Henderson, and he ran in the Triumph Hurdle Trial, I think, last year, and he'd been quite disappointing up until his last run at Kempton, and he looked like a new lease of life. He was very, very impressive, and I think that 16 to 1 definitely overstates his chances. I think he fits all the right profile for the race. He's young. Nicky Henderson has a good record in the race, and he's off a nice mark. So it'd be interesting to see if they do go to the Martin Pipe or this. I would fancy him more for this, purely for the weight. But he beat Echo last time on Boxing Day at Kempton. Some nice horses in behind there. Jarvis Plate, What's Up With You, Switch Hitter. And I think that he was very impressive the last day, and he's been one that I've kept my eye on, and he's not ran since, so he may have been put away for this.
I like it, mate. It's interesting with horses like that as well, especially when we start coming into the handicaps, because obviously last year we suffered the loss of Aintree, Punchestown, Fairy House. There's lots of horses that, not necessarily saying they haven't had the rest of the chance this season to do bits with their marks, but this year the trainers know full well that they've got a few festivals to be targeting some of these horses at. So just because they might not come good at Cheltenham doesn't mean they're ones to be writing off for the rest of the season. Like something like a Monte Cristo, for example, if he did run at Cheltenham, like you say, he's either been put away for this or he's been off for whatever reason. But if he didn't maybe run so well now, and then they went to Aintree with him after, like you'd fancy him after a run, even if he didn't go and win, wouldn't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. That's the thing as well, mate. I'm buzzing for Aintree because Paul Nicholls is just putting everything away for it. He's just going to dot up every race. Fairyhouse, Punchestown, it's going to be so good this year. So, should we go for something else at a big price? And then I feel like to wrap it up, because I like to waffle, this will be a long episode anyway, we can maybe look through some of the races that we haven't given a mention to, and then between us, see what sort of horses we can whittle it down to maybe if people are interested in like a block bet or something where they might want to put a couple of selections in from a couple of races. We could do that.
Yeah, sounds good. Can I go first this time?
Oh, I mean,
no,
yeah.
Far away.
No, I haven't even got anything lined up. I'm trying to think about one. So you do me a favour, go for it.
Horse I've also backed at a bigger price. I backed him at 20 to 1 to win the race off the guy that I did a podcast with, Andrew Blair White. If you've seen him on YouTube, he's everywhere. You have to see him. He told me this at the start of the season, and I've been following the horse, and we've got nice prices. Is Run Wild Fred for the Kim Muir. A bit like Gentleman to Me. I thought he'd be handicapped out of this. I thought he'd have a mark over 145 or just scrape in. He's been given a mark of 140. I think that is extremely lenient. And he's got form behind latest exhibition this season. Pencil full of lead. Elcat de Rear, the second favourite for the RSA. And Longhouse Poet. And then the last day he was put in a handicap, and the other Gordon Elliott Jigginstown horse, Cocoa Beach, won. He's since been quite impressive and has followed that up. And I think Run Wild Fred, I couldn't quite believe he got a mark of 140. They won the race last year with Milan Native. And I just think that he could be fairly well treated.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the cat's out the bag, he's 5 to 1. There's no doubting that. But he's just he's a seriously well handicapped horse going into it, I think. I hope.
Well, no, I have to agree. He's one of them. When the weights come out, you have, like, I try and make a list of A, horses that I'm interested in, and then B, horses that I suspect will be either handicapped out or they'll get a stupidly mark. He was in the list that he could have been in A because you could make a case for him, but he was in sort of B. I just thought he's going to get penalised because he's just so obvious. Then you look at the mark and you just think, nah, they've got to put him up something. And it just makes you wonder what the handicapper's thinking half the time, but maybe he knows better than we do. The good thing about mentioning horses like this as well is we obviously like to get stuck in from advance, which is part of the fun in it. The fact is now, even at the price that he is, and the same with Gentleman to Me, like people that might have missed a price, like just don't beat yourself up about it. If you missed the price, you missed the price. They've still got a chance and there's still potentially value off of it. You could stick them two in a double, couldn't you? Probably get 5 or 6 to 1 the pair, and all of a sudden you back up to 25 to 1. Admittedly, they've both got to go and win, but double them up. Josh Stacey's double nap of the week.
Add on Vire Allen to that, and you can double the price then as well.
Oh, so much money to be won, isn't there?
That easy. I wish.
If only. So, I mean, I feel like I've got to peel one out now. I'm very unprepared. I should be more prepared. It's because I'm trying to think about, like, the way we talk about this. I want to emphasise every single race I could give a selection and I could give an opinion in. But I'm trying to make sure that the ones that I talk about are the ones that I'm very, very excited about, the ones that I really like. So obviously the fact that I'm reaching a little bit of a plateau now means that I don't really, really, really fancy him that much. But he's got to go in because, like, he does win. And I'm ruining a race for us to block bet after because this is a nice race to do it in. But, oh well, is what it is. Champagne Platinum for the Patemps. I keep calling it the Patomps as well because it winds Darryl up. So Champagne Platinum in the Patomps. The Kim Muir last year that obviously we just touched on because Milan Native won it. This horse was smashed up for it, wasn't he? And he was pretty poor considering he was smashed up and looks like a JP plot and all that sort of stuff.
Never could jump a fence though, could he?
No, and that was the beauty of it. He looked well in off his mark, but because he couldn't jump fences, he didn't have enough in hand. Now they've come back over hurdles. I was thinking, Nicky, just like don't go and win anything like too early in the season, or just let me get like a bit of price on it because you need a competitive race for a horse like this. I think because if he goes in a fairly pants handicap, I think it's fair to see that most people would suggest that like he's capable of running in the 140s. Like I would say minimum. His run where he qualified at Haydock was just—it's like the stuff of dreams. And I know people say that you want your horse to come sixth, but he just finished second, was just out for a day out. And the fact we know what Haydock's like as a track. Some horses maybe don't get on with it. It can be a little bit hard. But even him coming second that day, like it looked so easy for him. only got bumped up £1 for it. I think the Boss's Oscar's been absolutely, well, I don't want to say the word out loud because it's rude, but he's not been very fairly treated by the handicapper. We've talked about these other ones, but they've been given a bit of a chance. They've been very offensive, I think, with the Boss's Oscar.
They're going to put a £7 claimer on them, though, aren't they?
But and I know there are some good claimers out there, so it could all be fine. But I still argue that you're getting a claim for a reason. The semi-negative with Champagne Platinum is I would quite like someone like Barry Geraghty to be on there because he's an absolute machine on the back of a horse. And then when you compare him to any claimer, as far as I'm concerned, the same as like when Ruby's already like, none of them can ride anywhere near him. But that'll be the caveat with Champagne Platinum, whether they decide to go Aidan Coleman or whether they decide to go Nico de Boinville, because I don't think I'd want to choose either of them as a first preference. But I do think his mark is definitely winnable. I genuinely think he's the sort of horse that will go and dot up in here, like when we've seen other nice horses go and win it before, where they win fairly cosily and you look back and just think that just looks so obvious. And he was, I think before he qualified, he was maybe 20, something like that. So obviously the price has reduced a little bit, but the fact that he is A, qualified, B, it's non-run and no bet, and C, we know his price and we can look at the rest of the competition and think, meh, there's not much about it. I think he'll go off probably 3-1, 4-1. I think he's going to win fairly comfortably as well. He's going to win. Imperial Alcazar, unfortunately, isn't good enough. And I think Fergal's comments about him as well. I don't think he's like the rise that he got for winning his race. I just don't think maybe they think he's got enough in hand. Come on, Teddy. That's the North Racing Club. They had him entered up at Sandown, somewhere like that. And I feel like they were targeting another race in the build-up to the Patomps. And then the ground went against it and he got pulled out of that race. So I think he was back.
It was at Warwick.
Yeah.
I know it ran at Warwick.
It was somewhere it was due to run and it got taken out. And just because the money came from it and I don't know, it seemed like they'd sort of had him planned for that day and then for whatever reason he didn't run. Let me see where it is. Maybe I can't remember. It was somewhere after Cheltenham before he ran at Warwick. Is there non-runner info on Racing Post website? No. Well, maybe he was entered and he didn't get into the final declaration, but wherever it was, he was entered up for somewhere and he got back midweek for the race. He didn't run. And I don't know. I kind of feel like the race at Warwick maybe came after. Again, he went off at Fab, but I think that's because there was money before, maybe running for the sake of it. I give him a little bit of a chance on what he did in his qualifier, but I don't know. There's just something smells a little bit about him. I don't think they were initially thinking we're going to go and win the Patomps final with him or Patemps final. I think they had something else in their mind. And now this is second thought. So could be wrong with that, but I'm right. Champagne Platinum, mate. Literally wins. Are you on?
No.
Do you hate him?
Don't hate him. Wouldn't be for me, though.
Josh, we've got one that divides the opinions.
It's an interesting race.
Because you can't trust him?
Yeah. He was so underwhelming over fences last year. And I think that's just stuck with me. I think his first performance this year, I was calling him to go for the Coral Cup. It was at Newbury and he pulled so hard over 2.5 miles. And I thought a fast run Coral Cup would really suit him. I was surprised that they tried to get him handicapped for the Patemps and go up in trip. I thought that'd have been the one thing that it wouldn't do with him. So I really don't know. He's obviously got a nice profile for the race, and it was eye-catching the way that he finished second last time, given a steady ride by Sean Bowen. I just think there's a few in there that potentially could spring a surprise.
Maybe, and it is one of those races at the Patemps that, because of the fact that the nature of the beast of how you qualify, there's 6 in there. There'll be a few eye catchers in there, and because they're horses that are getting beat, they're not necessarily going to be raised too high in the handicap, so you could potentially make a case for a few of them. That race last year, his Chase debut at Cheltenham, was there with a couple of mates. We fancied it because obviously decent novice hurdler. We were thinking, right, this is the start of it. It's a decent race, but he's going to be probably like a marsh horse or maybe even an RSA horse last season. We were sat in one of the tents watching on Betfair, and then all of a sudden, I can't remember what price was the number for, but he was I don't know, a 5-4, 6-4. So he was watching Betfair. In between going from the pre-parade ring to the parade ring, he went out to tens, and we were it's just typical, isn't it? Classic, what we say about JP plot jobs, or they're in it or something. But then whatever it was, there was something on his first debut last year where someone knew that this horse just wasn't going to be at it. And then when they started backing it for the Kim Muir, I still had that at the back of my mind. I was thinking, oh, he wasn't right at the start of the season, played out nicely, he's off a lower mark, and then he was pantsing that. So I know I am forgiving him quite a lot, but I just think he just didn't like fences. But I do think he is a proper stayer. I really like him, as you can tell.
Yeah, I agree. The one that I quite like in the race is Southfield Harvest for Paul Nicholls. He's lightly raced, but when he finished, he reminds me of a horse. He reminds me of top of the game. I think he's going to make a cracking chaser. But top of the game finished second in the Coral Cup behind Blueberry. Yeah, and I really like Southfield Harvest. He's quick, he's powerful, he screams a Paul Nicholls 3 mile chaser, and he's run well this season without winning. And I still think that 138 could be a nice mark for him. And Harry Cobden knows how to win the race. And going back to his form, he beat Stolen Silver as a young horse, second to Hurricane Harvey. He beat Muckamore. And this year, I think he's run behind some good horses and some good races as well. So I think he might be one to slits onto the radar. I think he's 16-1. I think he'll go off shorter, and I think he's got a great chance. He'd be the one.
See, this is the first one where we've been like complete opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's a race that.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say that it's a race that usually produces a really nice chaser and an RSA horse, and I think Imperial Alcazar, I think he'll make a cracking chaser next year. I think the Boss's Oscar will ultimately go over a fence as well, and Champagne Platinum could, but I think they're stepping back to this, which is why I would be more enthused by Southfield Harvest, because I think the end goal is to be a 3 mile chaser. But I do think he's got a great chance, and a mark of 138. I think we could look back at this mark in 2 years' time when he's won a couple of Grade 2 chasers, and think 138 of the hurdles was a bit of a steal.
You could, you could be right with him, but
you can make a case for everyone in the race.
Oh yeah, of course you could. But and I know obviously mine's a 7-1 poke and yours is a 16-1 poke, so they obviously are different ends of the spectrum. But there's a pound difference between the two of them. And he beat Muckamore, like you said, and Champagne Platinum was 5th in a Supreme. But again, this is the thing with handicaps, isn't it? There's like different ways that we look into it. We'll have horses that we like for whatever reason for the backstories, and you can make a genuine case for the majority of the runners in the race.
5th in a Supreme, but 7th in a Kim Muir.
But he wasn't trying that day because Derek Connors on, they put the blinkers on. It's like, you just weren't in the JP WhatsApp group that week. Don't worry. But this is the beauty of Cheltenham, minute, because there'll be lots of races, and this is the frustrating thing for I think the people that watch it this time of year, especially when it comes to previews. You just tip in the favourite. But they weren't the favourite necessarily at the start of the season. If they're the most likely horse to win the race, we're not just going to pick something else for the sake of it. When it comes to these, opinions are divided, and that's the beauty of the race, isn't
it? He was Champagne Platinum wasn't 5th in the Supreme. He was 5th at Punchestown, beaten 25 lengths by Classical Dream.
Grade 1 though, isn't it?
Grade 1 winner. I think Muckamore's got a grade 1 in him.
Muckamore's a nice horse as well, but the only reason he annoys me a little bit is he can pants this season, and he's like 120, and
Yeah, it was a joke, but yeah, Southfield Harvest got a good chance each way.
And ground as well for Southfield Harvest, that will suit him. Anywho, right, there's been enough arguments now with the attempts. That would have been a nice one for the block building bit, because you've got difference of opinions, but we're both fairly keen on them. So do you know what? That can be part of the next bit. Just for a couple more handicaps, because I'm conscious that this has been going on for a long time. I might divvy this up into 2 episodes. Who knows? We'll quickly skim through the handicaps, and then you can shout out the ones you fancy. Obviously, the races that we haven't covered. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I don't even want to say this race out loud because I feel like it's very, very obvious. I'm hoping either you A, agree with me, or B, you've got an absolute peach in there. Ultimate handicap chase. Have you got 1 or 2 that you like in there?
A few on the radar. Couldn't nail it down to 1. I think the 2 at the head of the market are very, very well handicapped. I actually quite like Cloth Cat to win it, but he won't run. Lieutenant Rocco, Happy Go Lucky, and Remastered. I think it'll be between those 3.
Nice. So Happy Go Lucky, Lieutenant Rocco, definitely in there. So these are the sort of ones. I mentioned block bets a few times. You can stick a couple of horses in a couple of races. Obviously, if one of them goes in, some money's rolling up on the next one. The beauty of Cheltenham is it's just handicap after handicap after handicap. So this is the first one. Just say, for example, you stuck in the Ultima and then you stuck in the Boodles as your little doubles. 2 horses in each would be 4 bets. Pound on each of them. Only going to cost you £4, but you'd have £8 go on the next one. If you get a couple of like 7 or 8 to 1 winners, you're still getting 50, 60 quid for your £4 outlay. If the first ones get beat, you just start it again, do Boodles and then Coral Cup or whatever it is. So yeah, head of the market, I like it. Boodles, I did mention it slightly there. Is there a horse in the Boodles that now the weights have come out and maybe money's come for it, you wish you were stuck into earlier, or are you on anything in the Boodles?
I am on something anti-post. I'm on Riviere de Tel anti-post, but I wouldn't be too confident. Hugri got a very lenient handicap mark of 128. It'd be interesting to see what he's like off that mark. But Bustleton and Riviere de Tel would be the ones that if Hugri wasn't in the race, you'd look at, but still yet to properly delve into it.
Yeah, I'm the same, mate. I haven't got stuck into it too far. This is the race that I wish was dropped compared to the Close Brothers, just because I think that it detracts from the triumph. You've got a 4-year-old race, let them run against each other. But no, that's a discussion for another day. Who Grizz is where I was saying about, is there a horse in the race that was a bigger price? Now the way to come out, you wish you'd back. He is that horse. I've got him in a couple of block bets that I built like a week before the weights came out, and I wish I'd backed him as a single because he's got a light mark. And I think I feel like it's a ridiculous thing to say, but Hell Red still tempts me at a bit of a price just because that Chepstow run at the beginning of the season, which was on quick ground, he looked like an absolute tool. Since then, he's been a little bit rogue, shall we say. But the fact that he was out and running that early in the season and he's been out, he's had experience in France, like he's entitled to be a little bit further forward than some of the other ones. So I still feel like Hell Red's tempting to go in there, but Bustleton, Who Grizz, Hell Red. What was the other Riviere de Tel, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think she'd be the one that would. She's the one I backed anti-post because she finished. She looked really impressive on a win, a maiden hurdle win, and then she went up against the elders. And I think Band of Outlaws did the same, or Aramax did the same. One of the two. I think it was Aramax actually. So yeah, it'd be interesting. Still don't know. Don't have a massive opinion on that.
No, the one for Band of Outlaws line in, I think Andrew mentioned, didn't he, Druid's Altar before when it was going for the race, and then obviously it won and then came into there. This is the thing with this sort of race, like there are a few in there that potentially could win it, but even if you're putting ones in at like 14, 16 to 1, you can get away with putting a few in. So we've whittled down the field, haven't we? We've given them about 8 there.
Yeah.
But again, this is was the idea of doing this, that you're going to see which ones we sort of are more confident on. When we get to, if you go through every single race in like a daily order, we might put a selection out there. People will just assume it's the same level of enthusiasm, but it's not. So you mentioned Coral Cup. You ruined that race for us. Grand Annual, you've ruined as well. No, it's good though. The Grand Annual one's definitely a nice one because I wouldn't have had not much different to say because I wouldn't have said what you said, but I don't think I could improve on that. Potemps, we've both just ruined. Potemps is the race that's going to divide us.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that day. I hope one of us is right. I hope they both got pulled up. Oh, yeah. Stable plate. Now is it Mrs. Paddy Power plate they've called it or something?
Yeah, Paddy Power handicap plate.
So, what do you fancy in this?
I really would have fancied Embrigado, but I don't think I'm running it anymore after winning today. But I really liked him. He fit the right profile. The one that I don't have a strong opinion in the race, but the one that I'd look at a big price. I think he's 20 to 1 in some places. Espoir de Goy, Venetia Williams. If it was soft ground, obviously that's looking unlikely. But he's got very good form on soft. He was beaten 4.5 lengths by Simply the Bets in November 2019, won twice after that, went into the novice handicap chase last year, was pulled up in it, never went well. Earl of the Cotswolds, back in form at the start of this year, and then 2 disappointing runs. But the last run at Warwick behind Espoir de Tellier, when he went off favourite, I thought that was encouraging. And I think that he would appreciate the extra furlong. He's got good handicap form, hasn't proved it around Cheltenham, but I think he'd have a squeak at a big price.
Nice. I keep seeing the shunt has been smashed in on every handicap that I'm looking at, and that's obviously
Yeah.
2-1 at Kelso today. Emmett Mullins sent over Cape Gentleman, didn't he, to go and win the Dovecote over 2 miles when that horse needs a trip. So he'll be interested going into Cheltenham. I was convinced he brought those couple of horses over ready for Cheltenham. So the fact that he's shoved them in and they've gone and won a race, I think that they'll both run at Cheltenham, but he's obviously found now, isn't he? And he's literally, he's entered in everything, isn't he? He's in Grand Annual, he's in the County Hurdle, he's all over the shop, isn't he? He's just an interesting one. When you see the Sea of Blue on Oddschecker, just be conscious that that's because he's won today, not because he's fancied to go and win the stable plate. Mr. Whitaker's one that I quite like. Not really much more than other than that he likes it around here, middle trip, and he's probably on an okay-ish mark after they tried to fanny about going higher up in trip with him. And Far Class I quite like a little bit. I thought he could have been like a Kim Muri horse. So the difference in trip there's a slight bit of a worry for me, but he's fairly well found. So not a race I've got a massive opinion in, as you could probably tell there. This is golden content now, isn't it? We're really into the dregs. Only person that's watching this now is Wayne Harrison.
And he's giving us a view as well.
Good old Wayne. I had a little conversation with him the other day, actually, funnily enough.
Nice bloke.
He's not too bad, to be fair, when he's not swearing and showing off. The thing is, I think he obviously just loves his horses because he sets up all the accounts and watches all the videos, doesn't he? County Hurdle we've already been through. Martin Pike, we've done it, haven't we? Unless you want to talk about cross country or Hunter's Chase.
No, thank you.
Superb. Right, Josh, I know I've taken longer than it was expected for tonight, but I really appreciate your time, mate. It's been good to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on.
I know you're very busy with everything that you do. Potentially, when it comes to Aintree, Punchestown or something, if we could maybe think about, do something again then. Maybe get Andrew involved. I'll see if I can get Daryl or Matt or one of the boys involved as well. We would have a little tussle and stuff, head to head. And then we'll do that sort of draft scenario where we'll cover the races because obviously Aintree only be a couple of days or a few days. And then we'll just have to pick the races as we go. And then some of us will be left with the Hunt Chase, whether we like it or not.
Sounds good.
Nice one. Thanks again for your time and good night.